In my pursuit for knowledge, and understanding of the human psyche, and, well, whatever functions beyond our awareness, beyond our comprehension of the mundane and the such, which is much easier to observe, I came across a concept which I knew of as a word, but I didn't know it existed with that meaning. The concept was called animus, and according to some psychologists, and, well, most notably Carl Jung, this is a term that coins, or let's say depicts, a certain fantasy that someone has. Typically, this term seems to be associated with an image that a certain person creates over the other gender, and, well, ends up as a fantasy on how they would imagine the other person to be. Unfortunately, this animus can be easily corrupted as a fantasy by the needs and, well, especially the lacks of an individual. And that is why you end up with people who chase and seek highly abusive people. Because in the end, that is what I used to call, in my own terms, a functional core. This is typically, as a term, it is a very broad one, which refers aspects of karmic level, of memory, that go beyond your current existence. Maybe it is not as simple, or maybe Animus goes much broader than I expected, but the idea of a functional core is something that will influence you in this life. Maybe it is a haunting from a previous life or a set of previous lives, or you've lived life in certain layers of misery and you got used to certain things, and, well, unconsciously, life in between, well, the piece of life that you are, in between existences within a biological physical body, let's call it so, will seek to not bypass, will seek to transcend. And if you are unable to transcend something, you will go through it so many times until you literally become willing to transcend it. Certain things will happen to you again and again. You'll probably second guess yourself, doubt things, invent all sorts of illusions to support the fact that they're not happening to you, it's just your imagination. But they will happen so many freaking times that one day you will break and you will not feel good at all anymore in your old skin. You will feel compelled to transcend those issues or seek answers and try to find a solution so that you no longer are a slave of those compulsions, a slave of those unmet needs, right? So, putting the things together, as I kind of almost always do, the term of the animus kind of opened up some understanding within me. Well, it was kind of the same with what I called as the inner cores or functional cores, which are technically structures of memory that influence people at an unconscious levels, and they tap into, well, let's say karma, but I typically prefer avoiding the term karma because it goes much broader than, the mindless YouTube videos and, you know people who create them talk about, because everyone nowadays talks about karma and influences and things like that. But you usually meet bozos who tell you about chakras, that they can be either hyper open or, under open. It's like, broski, those are nothing else but stupid classifications made by the mind, because if the mind is incapable of comprehending something, it will easily invent things so that it feels fulfilled, that it has created a classification. Because through classification, idiots think that they are wiser, that they are more knowledgeable. That is why a lot of things have become throughout life so convoluted. Because misery functions in a very simple way. The more miserable people feel, the more they suffer, the more convoluted they will make their life, because they will feel they have a certain sense of belonging. They will make their language hyper complex, their lifestyle hyper complex, their legal system hyper complex. And when things no longer suit the needs, or the illusions start breaking, they will make things even more convoluted, or they will change everything, rework everything in order to suit the new egos that come in command. And this is the unfortunate fate of all so many societies throughout the world. Because if people cannot comprehend misery, they will be trapped in it, and misery will be their only guide. So this explains why the animus, in the end, as a concept, dictates people to simply tend towards so many unwanted people in their life. That is why people end up with so many obsessions, or even worse, paraphilias, right? And looking at how I would observe things, the two paraphilias that drew my attention when I studied them, well, based on my own system and how information was stored in it and what I could gather from that insights, well, the two paraphilias that drew my attention, I heard there are far more though, were erotophonophilia and obviously the opposite of it, autassassinophilia. See, the first one, erotophonophilia, is all about even greater than an obsession, because a paraphilia is beyond an obsession. And it refers to killing during sexual intercourse. The eutassassinophilia is an even greater obsession than just an obsession, yes? It is an urge to fantasize, even will it to happen in real life, that you are killed during sexual intercourse. And these are still prevalent even nowadays. Erotophonophilia, as of what I've observed in the studies, simply stems from a lack of touch, especially from parents and such, from a lack of feminine, or at least a lack of grace. And this lack of grace becomes like a disease for the person suffering. It becomes such a great necessity that at the same time it also becomes so entrenched, that the person becomes so entrenched in that lack that they can no longer comprehend that something like that exists in their life. They technically become, or not become, they declare themselves an enemy of that which they do not have. So it becomes compelling to them that whatever is perceived as pure must be exterminated. And, well, paraphilias are not something that stem out of one single thing. They have a very rigorous intertwining of memories and parts and bits of what I call functional cores. Um, it is, let's say, I think it's much simpler to say it through Carl Jung's psychology, that they create in the end an animus that, or probably they have several, and one of them is if they meet someone who is pure at heart, someone who has those values that they are so entrenched into not having and hate even the thought of being around the such, they would do anything to even kill that person, right? This can go very deep. When people go so deep into the idea of not being worthy of the other gender, as from personal research I've seen, especially on myself, but also confirmed on the other people around me that I've taken a lot of time to study, the lower their awareness goes, well, also their esteem will grow lower. The lower their esteem goes, homosexuality will become more and more compelling. First and foremost, it will become intriguing, then it will become seductive, and then it will become compelling, right? And beyond that, they will even become warriors in the name of the such, because, well, fanaticism is kind of the end level of any kind of obsession. Beyond that, self-destructive behaviors will come. And in those self-destructive behaviors, it will either bump into what erotophonophilia says, or, well, more like kill that which you don't like, and you might end up not liking anything or anyone at that low level of esteem, because you become so apathic. Everyone, you're like borderline narcissistic, but at this level, let's say. So everyone becomes more or less a discardable resource. So in that level of apathy and pain, what's the worst of someone, right? So it becomes a compelling suffering in the name of either killing others, or, well, being killed by others, or at least very hurt. And you include in here all those people who go, well, people whom you see even in porn movies, right? Where, they just suffer. They just seek people to constantly validate their pains, their suffering. And beyond all of these lies only just one little conviction that they are not worthy of attention from anyone, not alone the other gender. Yes? So when you look at this, beyond these levels lies only one little aspect. Um, Extreme flagellation, and beyond that there is one level, self-destruction. Yes? So studying these for a long time actually made a good correlation with the term animus. So I decided to drop a video on this and share some of the wisdom acquired. I may have gotten some wisdoms through being alone in my life. And well, I've met people that twisted my opinions and points of view, turned them against me. And I figured out in time that being alone is far better than just being a validator of others, or living as if others need to validate me. The moment I became separate from the others, I felt like a shining star on their horizons. It was like they were suddenly so drawn to me, and while I was simply trying to validate them or trying to fix some aspects of them, I was simply irrelevant to them. Because when you are given this quality that you can feel other people's hurts at times with great ease, you simply feel that you can provide them a cure. To tell you the truth, or better said, to shatter your illusion, you will not be able to provide them any truth because everyone is on their path. It was such a piss for me to feel that I can provide people the correct steps they need to take. But still, people who suffer, they don't suffer because they don't necessarily know what to do. Few of them actually know what to do, but they are not courageous enough to take up the steps. So whatever help you want to provide, they will either take it as a distraction and feed their own egos again with the energy that you're providing and the help, money, resources that you can provide, especially if they're narcissistic, they don't ever mind receiving stuff. Or, well, they would simply take it for granted. Yes, you see that in fucked up women. Even when you tell them something nice about themselves, they will tell them that it's not bad, it's not good, that you shouldn't do that, but somewhere deep down inside they like it, right? It's what I call the cat syndrome, right? Just like a cat, they kind of don't want cuddles, but they still cuddle around you, right? It's like you have to act and behave based on what their whims are. And it's all about demi-narcissistic, at least a demi-narcissistic attempt at program you to function the way they feel secure about. The moment you no longer function by their script, they become intrigued. Because as long as you function by other people's, fucked up people's scripts, you're simply gonna be discardable because you're easy. They call you by your name, you just come like a, cutesy puppy. They don't care about that. All they want is to break people who they cannot control. In the worst narcissistic layers that one can reach, all they want is people who they cannot comprehend, people who they cannot control, and those will be the greatest challenges, because narcissists are always about the greatest challenges, and they will always obsess with breaking those that they cannot control. Yes, they will play innocent, they will play submissive, they will play any fantasy that they subconsciously feel that you need, any lack that you might have and they subconsciously feel, they will play all their cards on that at least. So hopefully this video raised a bit of awareness. You're appreciated. Take care, enjoy life, and this being said, Ferenjan Board signing out.